The massive space station called Nexus Prime floated in the darkness of space like a glowing metal city. It was bigger than most planets, with towers that stretched for miles and docking bays that could hold 1,000 ships. This was the heart of the Galactic Council, home to the most powerful beings in the galaxy. High Counselor Zethkar walked through the grand halls of the station. His 6 legs clicked on the crystal floor as he moved. The Vorthik was tall and thin, with purple skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. Like all council members, he wore the golden robes that showed his high position. Behind him, smaller creatures scurried to keep up, carrying data tablets and important papers. The council had ruled the galaxy for over 10,000 years. During that time, they had brought peace to 847 different species across millions of worlds. Wars had become rare. Trade flowed freely between star systems. Disease and hunger were almost gone from most civilized planets. The council was proud of what they had built, but this peace came with a price. Every species that joined the galactic community had to pay tribute. This was not seen as a punishment, but as a fair exchange. The council offered protection, advanced technology, and access to galactic trade. In return, each species gave what they could spare. Some species gave raw materials like rare metals or crystals. Others shared their knowledge of science or medicine. The strongest species provided soldiers for the peacekeepers, the council's military force. The system worked perfectly. Every species was happy to pay their tribute for the benefits they received. Zethkar entered the council chambers, a huge round room with seats for representatives from all 847 species. Today, only the inner circle was present. These were the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. They made the important decisions that affected everyone. "My friends," Zethkar said, as he took his place at the center of the room, "we have excellent news to share today. Our exploration fleets have discovered 12 new worlds this month. All of them show signs of intelligent life." The other council members made sounds of approval. New worlds meant new resources, new knowledge, and new allies. Each discovery made the council stronger and the galaxy more peaceful. Admiral Vextel of the Hegemony Navy stood up. The warrior species was covered in thick armor that looked like metal scales. "What about military potential?" he asked. "Do any of these species show promise as fighters?" "Most are too primitive for military service," Zethkar replied, checking his data tablet. "But there is one that might interest you. They call themselves humans, from a planet called Earth. They're still very early in their development, but our scouts report something unusual." The chamber grew quiet. Unusual species always caught the council's attention. "What makes them special?" asked Counselor Yithara. The floating jellyfish-like creature spoke through a translation device, sensor species, communicated with colors and electrical pulses. Zethkar's 4 eyes blinked slowly. "They are the first species we have found that is currently engaged in planet-wide warfare. Most species fight among themselves until they develop space travel. These humans are still fighting each other, even as they build ships to reach other worlds." Admiral Vextel leaned forward with interest. "Are they strong fighters?" "Our scouts say yes, but in a strange way. They do not have the best weapons or the strongest bodies. But they refuse to surrender, even when facing certain death. Their history is full of small groups defeating much larger armies. They seem to prefer death over defeat." This information caused excited murmurs throughout the chamber. Most species were logical and practical. When faced with overwhelming odds, they surrendered and looked for a peaceful solution. A species that chose death over defeat was rare and valuable. "They sound perfect for the peacekeepers," Admiral Vextel said with satisfaction. "Fresh soldiers who fight without fear of death. We can train them properly and use them for difficult missions." But Counselor Yithara flashed worried colors. "A species that prefers death to defeat might also prefer death to serving others. Have we considered that they might refuse tribute? The chamber fell silent. In 10,000 years of galactic expansion, no species had ever refused to pay tribute. The idea was so strange that most council members had never even thought about it. Zefker made a dismissive gesture with one of his forearms. Impossible. Once they see our technology and power, they will understand that resistance is pointless. Look at our fleet strength. Look at our weapons. Look at this station. No reasonable species would choose to fight us when they could join us instead. The other council members nodded in agreement. The humans were primitives with basic technology. They had small ships and simple weapons. The council controlled technology that could destroy entire star systems. The humans would see the obvious choice and accept their place in the galactic community. I suggest we send Ambassador Fleet Omega-7, Zethkar continued. Admiral Kreolox has handled first contact with 43 species. He knows the proper procedures. The humans will be given the standard choice of tribute categories, and we will welcome them into our community. The vote was quick and unanimous. Ambassador Fleet Omega-7 would travel to the human solar system within the week. The humans would be contacted, shown the benefits of joining the galactic community, and asked to choose their tribute payment. Like every other species before them, they would make the logical choice as the council meeting ended and the members filed out of the chamber. None of them could imagine what was about to happen. In their long history of bringing peace to the galaxy, they had never encountered a species quite like humanity. They had no idea that some words could change everything. The stage was set for a meeting that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. The council was about to learn that their perfect system had one weakness they had never considered. They were about to meet the first species that would look at their overwhelming power and respond with the one word they had never heard before. But for now, they prepared their ships and practiced their speeches, confident that in a few weeks, humanity would be another successful addition to their peaceful galaxy. The alarm bells echoed through the International Space Station Unity as radar. Operators stared at their screens in disbelief. 12 massive objects had appeared at the edge of the solar system, moving toward Earth at impossible speeds. Each ship was larger than anything humanity had ever built. Gleaming like silver mountains in the darkness of space, Dr. Sarah Chen floated in the zero gravity of the station. Her dark hair tied back as she worked frantically at her computer. As Earth's leading expert on the possibility of alien life, she had dreamed of this moment her entire career. But now that it was happening, fear mixed with excitement in her chest. "How big are they?" asked Admiral Marcus Webb, the graying military commander who had been rushed to the station when the alien ships were first detected. "The largest one is about 20 miles long," Dr. Chun replied, her voice barely steady. "The others are smaller, but still bigger than our largest cities. We're not just talking about advanced technology here. We're talking about a civilization that can build ships the size of mountains." The alien fleet had been broadcasting the same message in hundreds of different languages for the past 6 hours. Somehow, they had learned every human language perfectly. The message was simple and polite, but it made everyone who heard it feel very small. "Greetings, people of Earth. We are representatives of the Galactic Council. We come in peace and friendship. We request a meeting with your leaders to discuss your species' future in the galactic community. Please respond at your earliest convenience." Every government on Earth had been involved in heated discussions about how to respond. Some wanted to hide and pretend humanity wasn't ready for contact. Others wanted to try to fight, even though everyone knew it would be hopeless. In the end, they decided to meet with the aliens and try to learn what they wanted. 3 days after the first contact, Admiral Kreolox of the Galactic Council stepped onto the human space station. The alien was unlike anything the humans had ever imagined. He stood 8 feet tall on 4 thin legs, with a body that looked like it was made of living crystal. His head had 6 eyes arranged in a circle, and his mouth was full of teeth that sparkled like diamonds. Despite his frightening appearance, his voice was calm and friendly when he spoke through a small translation device. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us," Admiral Krelok said as he looked around the small conference room. "Your station is quite impressive for such a young species. We are pleased to make contact with humanity." Dr. Chun and Admiral Webb sat across from the alien, trying to hide their nervousness. The alien had brought 2 assistants, creatures that looked like walking plants with too many arms. They stood silently behind their commander, holding glowing tablets that seemed to contain vast amounts of information. "We're honored by your visit," Dr. Chen said carefully. "We have many questions about your civilization and your reasons for coming here." Admiral Krelok made a sound that might have been laughter. "Of course you do. All young species are curious when they first join the galactic community. I will be happy to explain everything." The alien activated a device that projected images into the air above the table. The humans watched in amazement as pictures of countless worlds appeared before them. Cities that floated in the clouds, underwater civilizations, space stations that orbited dying stars. It was more beautiful and terrifying than any science fiction movie. The Galactic Council represents 847 different species across this galaxy, Admiral Krelok explained. "We have brought peace and prosperity to billions of worlds. Wars are rare. Disease and hunger have been eliminated on most civilized planets. Technology is shared freely among all member species. It is a golden age that has lasted for 10,000 years. Admiral Webb leaned forward. "And you want humanity to join this council?" "Not exactly," the alien replied. "Membership in the council is earned through centuries of contribution and growth. But every species is welcome to participate in our community. All we ask is that each species contribute what they can to the common good." Dr. Chun felt her heart sink as she realized where this conversation was heading. "You want something from us." "We prefer to call it tribute," Admiral Krelok said smoothly. "It is a fair exchange. We offer you protection from hostile species, access to advanced technology, and the chance to trade with civilizations across the galaxy. In return, you contribute according to your abilities." The alien touched his device again, and new images appeared. Humans working in space mines, harvesting rare crystals. Human soldiers in advanced armor, fighting alongside alien armies. Human scientists working in vast laboratories, developing new technologies. "You have 3 categories to choose from," Admiral Krelok continued. "First, raw materials. Your planet has several rare metals that are valuable for starship construction. Second, biological resources. Human genetic material could help us develop new medicines and improvements for other species. Third, military service. Our scouts report that humans are natural fighters who refuse to surrender even in hopeless situations. Such warriors would be very valuable to our peacekeepers." The room fell silent as the humans tried to process what they were hearing. After dreaming of meeting aliens for so long, they had discovered that first contact meant becoming servants to a galactic empire. What if we refuse? Admiral Webb asked quietly. Admiral Krelok's S6 eyes blinked in confusion. "I do not understand the question. Why would you refuse? What if we don't want to give you tribute? What if we want to remain independent?" The alien stared at the human for a long moment, as if he had spoken in a language the translation device couldn't handle. Finally, Admiral Krelok made that sound that might have been laughter again. "My friend, I think you misunderstand the situation. This is not a negotiation. This is us welcoming you into the galactic community. Every species pays tribute. It is how civilization works. The only choice you have is which category of tribute he will provide. Dr. Chun felt anger rising in her chest, but she kept her voice calm. "And if we still refuse?" "That has never happened," Admiral Krelox replied simply. "In 10,000 years and 847 species, no one has ever refused. Once you see the benefits we offer and compare them to your current primitive state, you will make the logical choice." The aliens stood up, towering over the humans. "I will give you 7 of your days to consider your options and choose your tribute category. This is standard procedure for all new species. When I return, you can tell me which type of contribution your species will make to the galactic community." As Admiral Krelox and his assistants prepared to leave the station, he turned back to the humans one final time. "I understand this is overwhelming for a young species. But remember, we are offering you a chance to join something magnificent. Do not let fear prevent you from making the right choice." After the aliens had returned to their ships, Dr. Chun and Admiral Webb sat in stunned silence. Through the small window of the station, they could see the massive alien fleet waiting patiently for humanity's answer. 7 days, Admiral Webb said finally. 7 days to decide if our species becomes slaves or if we choose to fight a hopeless war. Dr. Chun looked out at the alien ships and felt something stirring in her chest. It wasn't fear or despair. It was something much more dangerous to the aliens' perfect system. It was defiance. "Maybe," she said quietly, "there's a third option they haven't considered." The news spread across Earth like wildfire. Within hours of the alien meeting, every television channel, radio station, and internet site was broadcasting the same incredible story. Humanity had been contacted by aliens, and those aliens wanted Earth to become part of their galactic empire by paying tribute. In the emergency session hall of the United Nations in New York, representatives from every nation on Earth gathered for the most important meeting in human history. The air was thick with tension as translators worked frantically to keep up with the heated discussions in dozens of languages. "We have to be realistic about this situation," said President Harrison of the United States as he addressed the packed assembly. "These aliens have technology we can't even imagine. Their smallest ship could probably destroy our entire planet. We need to think carefully about our response." The Russian representative, Premier Volkov, stood up with anger in his voice. "You want us to become slaves? To send our children to work in alien mines or fight in alien wars? This is not a choice. This is surrender. But what's the alternative?" asked Prime Minister Chun of China. "Do we fight a war we cannot win? Do we doom our entire species because of pride?" The debate raged for hours as humanity struggled with an impossible choice. Military leaders presented classified reports showing just how hopeless a fight would be. The alien ships were made of materials that could withstand nuclear weapons. Their technology was so advanced that Earth's best weapons would be like throwing stones at a tank. But something strange was happening as the arguments continued. Despite the fear and uncertainty, a pattern was emerging from the chaos. Whether they were from America or Russia, China or Nigeria, Brazil or Japan, the representatives kept reaching the same conclusion. "My grandfather fought against the Nazis," said the representative from Poland, her voice shaking with emotion. "He told me that there are some things worse than death. Freedom is not something you can give away and hope to get back later." The representative from India nodded in agreement. "We fought for our independence from the British Empire. It took decades and cost many lives, but we could not accept being ruled by others, no matter how powerful they were." "The aliens say this has never happened before," added the representative from Kenya. "They say no species has ever refused their tribute system. Maybe that's because no other species has had to fight for their freedom the way humans have." Dr. Chun watched the debates from the space station Unity, linked to Earth by video connection. She could see the alien fleet in the distance, waiting patiently for humanity's response. The aliens probably expected the humans to spend the 7 days arguing about which type of tribute to pay, not whether to pay any tribute at all. But as the days passed, something remarkable happened. The heated arguments began to fade, replaced by a quiet determination that seemed to spread from person to person. Social media was flooded with messages from ordinary people around the world. Farmers and teachers, soldiers and students, rich and poor, all saying the same thing in different ways. I would rather die free than live as a slave. My ancestors didn't survive wars and famines so that I could surrender to aliens. If we give up now, what kind of world are we leaving for our children? Religious leaders from every faith held special prayers and services. Some prayed for wisdom, others for strength, but all seemed to reach the same conclusion. The aliens offered safety and comfort, but only in exchange for humanity's soul. On the 6th day, something unprecedented happened. For the first time in human history, every government on Earth agreed on something. The vote in the United Nations was unanimous. The choice was made. Dr. Chun volunteered to deliver humanity's response alone. She felt it was somehow appropriate that a single human should speak for all of humanity. Admiral Webb wanted to accompany her, but she insisted this was something she needed to do by herself. On the 7th day, Dr. Chun waited in the small conference room aboard the space station as Admiral Kreolox returned for humanity's answer. The alien commander seemed relaxed and confident as he entered with his 2 assistants. After 7 days of waiting, he was probably eager to finish this routine procedure and welcome another species into the galactic community. Dr. Chun, Admiral Kreolox said pleasantly as he took his seat, I trust your species has had enough time to consider the options. The tribute system has brought peace and prosperity to 847 species across the galaxy. I'm confident that humanity will make the logical choice. Dr. Chun sat across from the alien, her hands folded calmly on the table. She had not brought any documents or data tablets. She carried no proposals or counteroffers. The weight of representing 8 billion human beings pressed down on her shoulders, but her voice was steady. Have you decided which category of tribute your species will provide? Admiral Kreolox asked, activating his recording device to document humanity's choice for the Council records. Dr. Chun looked directly into the alien's 6 eyes. In that moment, she thought about every human who had ever lived and died. She thought about the cave painters who created art in the darkness, knowing they might never see sunlight again. She thought about the soldiers who charged into hopeless battles because someone had to stand against tyranny. She thought about the scientists who asked dangerous questions and the artists who created beauty in a harsh universe. She thought about every human who had ever looked at overwhelming odds and chosen to fight anyway, not because they could win, but because some things were worth fighting for, even in defeat. What category of tribute does your species select? Admiral Kreolox asked again, perhaps thinking she hadn't understood the question. Dr. Chun took a deep breath. She spoke clearly and calmly, making sure the translation device could pick up every syllable. The word she spoke was simple, one that every human child learned before they could walk. But it was a word that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. No, Admiral Kreolox froze. His 6 eyes blinked rapidly, as if he were trying to process information that didn't make sense. His 2 assistants looked at each other with confusion, their plant-like faces showing emotions that seemed very human in that moment. I'm sorry, the alien said finally. I think there may be a translation error. Could you repeat your species' choice of tribute category? Dr. Chun never broke eye contact with the alien commander. Her voice remained calm and clear, but there was something in it that made the temperature in the room seem to drop several degrees. No, we will not pay tribute. We will not send our resources to your empire. We will not give you our people as workers or soldiers. We choose to remain free and independent." The silence that followed lasted for almost a full minute. Admiral Krelox stared at the human as if she had just claimed that gravity didn't exist or that stars were made of ice. His mouth opened and closed several times, but no words came out. Finally, he managed to speak, though his voice sounded very different than before. But this is impossible. No species has ever refused tribute. The system has worked for 10,000 years. Every civilization sees the logic of cooperation. "Then we're the first," Dr. Chun replied simply. The alien commander's crystal-like body began to change color, shifting from clear to a deep purple that probably indicated stress or confusion. He activated several devices at once, clearly trying to contact his superiors for guidance. "You don't understand," he said desperately. "Without the Council's protection, you'll be vulnerable to hostile species. Without our technology, you'll remain primitive forever. Without access to galactic trade, your economy will never grow beyond this small system." Dr. Chun stood up, her small human frame somehow seeming to fill the room with quiet strength. "We understand perfectly. We're choosing freedom over safety, independence over comfort, and dignity over survival. It's what humans do." As she walked toward the door, she paused and looked back at the alien who had come to Earth expecting routine compliance. "You can keep your tribute system. We'll make our own way in the universe." The last thing Admiral Krelox heard before Dr. Chun left the room was something that would haunt him for the rest of his very long life. It was the sound of a human laughing with pure, defiant joy. Admiral Krelox floated in the command center of his flagship, staring at the communication panel that connected him directly to the Galactic Council. His crystal body had turned a deep shade of red, a color that indicated extreme distress among his species. Around him, his crew worked in unusual silence, all of them trying to process what had just happened. "Say that again," came the voice of High Counselor Zethkar from across the galaxy. Even through the advanced communication system, the shock in the council leader's voice was clear. "The humans refused tribute, High Counselor," Admiral Krelox repeated, his voice barely steady. "I followed all standard protocols. I explained the benefits of joining the galactic community. I gave them the traditional 7 days to consider their options. But when I asked for their choice of tribute category, their representative said, no." The communication channel fell silent for nearly 30 seconds. When Zethkar's voice returned, it sounded hollow and confused. "That's not possible. In 10,000 years of expansion, no species has ever refused tribute. Are you certain the translation was correct?" "I've checked the translation matrix 17 times, Admiral Krelox replied. "The human word no translates clearly in all 847 known languages. It means rejection, refusal, denial. They understand what they're doing, and they're doing it anyway." On Nexus Prime, emergency alarms were sounding throughout the massive space station. The council chambers filled rapidly as representatives from hundreds of species abandoned their normal duties to deal with this unprecedented crisis. Never before had they faced a situation that wasn't covered by their ancient protocols. Counselor Uthar's jellyfish-like form pulsed with agitated colors as she addressed the assembly. "We need to understand what this means for the stability of our entire system. If one species can refuse tribute, others might follow their example." "Impossible," declared Representative Gorn of the Hegemony military caste. The massive warrior stood 12 feet tall, covered in armor-like scales that could stop energy weapons. "The humans are primitives with basic technology. Once they see our true military power, they'll realize their mistake and submit." But Admiral Vexthal, the military commander who had been interested in human warriors, was studying tactical reports on his data tablet. His expression was troubled as he read analysis from the Council's Xenopsychology division. "I'm not so certain," Admiral Vexthal said slowly. "Our intelligence reports show disturbing patterns in human behavior. They've been fighting wars for their entire recorded history. Their entertainment celebrates stories of small groups defeating larger enemies. Their literature is filled with characters who choose death over submission." High Counselor Zethkar activated the main display, showing tactical analyses of human military capabilities. "Look at their technology," he said dismissively. "Their largest ships are smaller than our shuttles. Their most powerful weapons couldn't penetrate our basic shields. A single Council battleship could destroy their entire planet." "That's exactly the problem," Admiral Vexthal replied grimly. "Every other species we've encountered has been logical. When faced with overwhelming force, they surrender and look for ways to benefit from cooperation. But according to our psychological profiles, humans don't think that way." The Admiral activated another display showing human historical data. Images of ancient battles filled the air above the Council chamber. Spartans at Thermopylae, Texans at the Alamo, British pilots during the Battle of Britain, soldiers at Stalingrad. Each example showed humans choosing to fight hopeless battles rather than surrender. "If we attack Earth," Admiral Vexthal continued, "they won't surrender when their defenses are breached. They won't negotiate when their cities are burning. Based on their psychological profile, they'll fight until every last human is dead. They'll turn their own planet into a graveyard just to make us pay a price for victory." A shocked murmur ran through the Council chambers. The idea of a species choosing total extinction over submission was so alien to most Council members that they had trouble understanding it. Representative Shander of the Pacifist Coalition spoke up, her melodious voice carrying across the chamber. "Perhaps we're approaching this wrong. Maybe the humans simply need more time to understand the benefits we offer. We could try a diplomatic approach, show them more of our technology and culture." "We tried diplomacy." Admiral Krelock's voice came through the communication system. "I was polite and respectful. I explained everything clearly. The human representative understood perfectly. She just didn't care about the benefits we offered." The communication channel crackled with static as Admiral Krelock transmitted additional data. "There's something else you need to know. I've been monitoring Earth's communications since the meeting. The entire planet is united behind their decision. Every government, every military, every citizen organization has agreed to refuse tribute. This isn't the choice of a few leaders. It's the will of their entire species." This news sent another wave of shock through the Council chambers. Most species had to debate for months or years before reaching decisions about tribute categories. The fact that 8 billion humans had reached unanimous agreement in 7 days was almost as disturbing as their refusal itself. "Counselor," Uthara flashed urgent red colors. "This is spreading beyond Earth. I'm receiving reports that several client species have heard about the human response. Some are asking questions about whether tribute payment is really mandatory." High Counselor Zethkar felt something he had never experienced in his long life: panic. The tribute system wasn't just about collecting resources. It was the foundation of Council authority. If species began to think they could refuse tribute, the entire structure of galactic civilization could collapse. "Open a channel to all client species," Zethkar ordered. "Send a message explaining that the human situation is a temporary anomaly being resolved through diplomatic means." But even as the message was being prepared, reports were coming in from across the galaxy. The Andronian Mining Collective had reduced their monthly tribute shipment by half, claiming technical difficulties. The Kelmer Republic was asking for clarification about whether tribute payments were voluntary. 3 separate species had requested meetings to renegotiate their tribute obligations. On Earth, Dr. Sarah Chun stood in the observation deck of Space Station Unity, watching the alien fleet in the distance. The massive ships hadn't moved in 3 days, but she could see small shuttles moving between them constantly. The aliens were clearly in intense communication with their government, probably trying to figure out what to do with a species that had broken their fundamental rules. She wasn't afraid. Fear would have been logical, given the overwhelming force arrayed against Earth. But somehow she felt only a strange sense of peace. Humanity had spoken with one voice for the first time in their history. Whatever happened next, they would face it as a united species. Dr. Chen's communication device chimed with a message from Earth. President Harrison's face appeared on the screen. Tired but determined. Sarah, we're getting reports that other alien species across the galaxy are starting to question their tribute payments. It seems our no is causing some kind of chain reaction. Dr. Chen smiled as she looked out at the alien ships. Good. Maybe we're not the only species that values freedom more than safety. Back on Nexus Prime, High Counselor Zethkar stared at the tactical displays showing the location of every Council fleet in the galaxy. For 10,000 years, their system had been perfect. Every species paid tribute willingly, grateful for the protection and benefits they received in return. But now, with a single word spoken by a primitive species from the edge of the galaxy, that perfect system was beginning to crack. The humans had done something no council member had thought possible. They had said no to the most powerful force in the galaxy, and somehow, that simple word was spreading, like a virus through their carefully ordered civilization. The age of unquestioned council authority was ending, and it had been killed by the smallest and most powerful word in any language. No. 1 year after humanity said no, the Galactic Council faced a crisis unlike anything in their 10,000-year history. High Counselor Zethkar stood before the emergency assembly, looking out at seats that had once been filled with loyal representatives. Now, nearly a third of those seats were empty. The Andronian Mining Collective has formally declared independence. Zethkar announced to the remaining council members, his voice heavy with defeat. They've stopped all tribute payments and expelled our administrative staff from their worlds. A wave of worried murmurs filled the chamber. The Androrians controlled 17 star systems rich in rare metals essential for starship construction. Their loss was more than symbolic. It was an economic disaster. Representative Gorn of the hegemony military caste slammed his massive fist on his desk. This madness must end. Send the fleet to crush these rebels and show the galaxy what happens to those who defy the council. But Admiral Vextel shook his head grimly. We tried that approach with the Kelmer Republic 3 months ago. Yes, we won the war and occupied their worlds. But we lost 47 ships and over 2 million peacekeepers in the process. The Kelmers fought like humans. They preferred death to surrender. Every city became a fortress. Every civilian became a soldier. The military commander activated a holographic display showing casualty reports from across the galaxy. Worse, the brutal suppression of Kelmer independence has inspired 17 other species to begin armed resistance. We're fighting brushfire wars on 43 different worlds. Our forces are spread too thin, and morale is collapsing. Counselor Uthar flashed deep blue colors of despair. The human word has spread to species that have been paying tribute for thousands of years. They're asking questions we never taught them to ask. Why should they serve others? Why can't they govern themselves? Why should they give away the fruits of their labor? High Counselor Zethkar felt the weight of galactic civilization crumbling around him. The tribute system hadn't just been about collecting resources. It had been about maintaining order, preventing wars, and ensuring that stronger species protected weaker ones. But now that order was collapsing, and chaos was spreading across the galaxy. What about the humans? Asked Representative Shander. Are they still refusing all contact with the Council? Admiral Kreolox, who had remained in the human solar system for the past year, appeared on the communication screen. His crystal body had taken on a permanent purple hue of stress and confusion. The humans have established what they call a quarantine zone around their system. They've made it clear that any council ship approaching their worlds will be treated as hostile. The Admiral's report had become depressingly familiar over the past months. They've been building defensive platforms and training their military, but they haven't made any aggressive moves toward Council territory. They seem content to remain isolated and independent. But there was something else in Admiral Kreolok's voice, a note of reluctant admiration that disturbed many Council members. I must report that their technology has advanced remarkably in just 1 year. They've reverse-engineered some of our basic systems and improved upon them. Their scientists work with an intensity and creativity that our xenopsychologists find unsettling. What the Admiral didn't mention was what he had observed about human society itself. Instead of collapsing into chaos without Council guidance, humanity had become more united than ever before. Their decision to refuse tribute had given them a common purpose that transcended their old divisions. Nations that had been enemies for centuries were now working together to defend their shared independence. On Earth, Dr. Sarah Chun had been appointed as the planet's first director of galactic affairs. She worked from a new facility built in the shadow of humanity's growing defensive fleet, ships that combined human innovation with carefully studied alien technology. Status report, she said as she entered the command center, where screens displayed information about the chaos spreading across the galaxy. 17 more species declared independence this month, reported Captain Martinez, a former military officer who now tracked galactic political developments. The Council's response has been inconsistent. They've brutally suppressed some rebellions while completely ignoring others. Dr. Chun studied the star maps showing the locations of various independence movements. A pattern was emerging that filled her with both hope and concern. Species that fought like humans, preferring death to surrender, were usually left alone after their initial declaration. Species that used traditional logic and could be negotiated with were either crushed or brought back into the tribute system through a combination of threats and promises. They're learning, she said quietly. The Council is starting to understand that some fights cost more than they're worth. There's something else, Captain Martinez continued. We're receiving secret communications from dozens of species still within the Council sphere. They want to know how we did it, how we united our entire species behind a single decision, how we found the courage to say no to overwhelming force. Dr. Chun smiled as she remembered that day on the space station when she had spoken humanity's simple response to the alien demand. She had no idea that one word would echo across the galaxy, inspiring billions of beings to question the system they had always accepted. Schedule a meeting with the resistance leaders, she said. It's time to share what we've learned. 3 months later, representatives from 47 independent species gathered in a hidden location at the edge of Council space. The meeting was organized by humans, but Dr. Chun was careful not to position humanity as the leader of the growing resistance movement. We're here to share knowledge and coordinate our efforts, she told the diverse group of aliens who had come from across the galaxy. Each species must find their own path to freedom, but we can learn from each other's experiences. The meeting lasted for 3 days as species shared their stories of rebellion and independence. The Androrians had used their industrial might to build a military that could match Council forces. The Zephyrians had turned their homeworld into an impregnable fortress using advanced shield technology. The crystalline communes had simply disappeared into deep space, taking their entire civilization with them on massive generation ships. But the most important discussion wasn't about military tactics or technology. It was about something much more fundamental, the idea that sentient beings had the right to govern themselves, to keep the fruits of their own labor, and to say no to authority they didn't choose to accept. By the end of the meeting, 31 species had signed what became known as the Independence Accords, a mutual defense agreement that promised aid to any member species threatened by Council retaliation. Back on Nexus Prime, High Counselor Zefkar read the intelligence reports about the Independence Accords with growing despair. The Council still controlled the majority of galactic civilization, but their authority was being challenged in ways they had never imagined possible. Perhaps it's time to consider reforming our tribute system, suggested Counselor Yithara. We could make payments voluntary, or reduce the amounts requested, or offer greater representation in Council decisions. But Representative Gorn rejected the idea immediately. Any compromise will be seen as weakness. If we back down now, every species in the galaxy will think they can defy us. The debate raged for hours, with no clear consensus emerging. The Council was trapped between two impossible choices: continue fighting expensive wars against species that refused to surrender, or accept reforms that would fundamentally change their system of government. 5 years after humanity said no, Dr. Chun stood in the observation deck of Earth's newest space station, watching ships from the Independence Accords conduct joint training exercises. Vessels from dozens of species worked together, sharing technology and tactics that made them stronger than they had ever been as individual tributaries to the Council. Her communication device chimed with a priority message from Admiral Webb, now commanding humanity's expanded defense fleet. His weathered face appeared on the screen with news that would have seemed impossible just a few years earlier. Sarah, we just received a formal communication from the Galactic Council. They want to negotiate a non-aggression treaty with the Independence Accords. They're offering to recognize our sovereignty in exchange for a promise not to interfere with their remaining tributary species. Dr. Chun looked out at the mixed fleet of ships, each representing a species that had found the courage to say no to 10,000 years of tradition. The word that humanity had spoken in a small conference room had traveled across the galaxy, inspiring a revolution that changed the course of galactic civilization. Tell them we'll consider their proposal, she said with a smile. But make it clear that any negotiations will take place between equals, not between masters and servants. As she ended the communication, Dr. Chen reflected on how far they had all come. Humanity had proven that sometimes the smallest word could be the most powerful force in the universe. They had shown that freedom was worth fighting for, even against impossible odds. Most importantly, they had demonstrated that when enough voices say no together, even the most powerful authority in the galaxy has to listen.